me, Mr. DJ.
Hey, check this out. We got a great show coming your way.
From the ECSI Sports Studios, it's the Midday Market Report with Jeff Dawson.
Good afternoon, sports fans from all around the globe. I am your host, Jeff Dawson, East Coast Sports Investors, and this is your Midday Market Report for Wednesday, March 8th, 2023. It's that time of the week where we are blessed, honored to have a good friend and colleague, Brady Kannon, grace us in our studios and to get us up to speed on the TPC. As I told him backstage, had our producer put the lovely 17th hole. That is the TPC, where I would probably have 2 bags of balls and I would hold up 8 groups behind us because I couldn't land it on the green, but that's for another show anyway. So without further ado, let's bring him on, the one and only Mr. Brady Kannon.
How are you, Mr. Dawson? Good to be with you again, my friend.
Oh, great to be here. Great to be here. I'm going back to last weekend at the Arnold Palmer. I'm sitting there with my one and done. I had Scotty Scheffler. Now, a quick 2-second story with Scotty Scheffler. Last year, I had him in my one and done, and he was the first round leader after Thursday. And after Friday, he missed the cut. Okay, so I have no success with Scotty Scheffler. And I was listening to a few shows on Monday. The 16th hole on Sunday, you could have got Scotty at plus 250. Now, I myself don't really dive into that. I'm a pre-flop. I might jump in on a Saturday or Sunday to try to grab some value. At any point, did you see yourself thinking that is it Kitayama was going to hold on there?
Well, I didn't think so. I believe it was the 9th hole that he triple bogeyed, and I thought that was the end of the tournament for him. But on the back 9 on Sunday, Scotty Scheffler wasn't taking advantage of opportunities. Rory made a couple of bogeys. Jordan Spieth really kind of had, I wouldn't call it a full meltdown, but he certainly missed some short putts and his driver started to get erratic. He was driving the ball into the very difficult rough out there that we saw last week. Jordan Spieth, started the day just on fire. And it looked like he was going to eventually make his way into the winner's circle, but the back 9 got difficult for him as well. Victor Hovland fell apart a little bit on the back 9, and it just really opened up the door for Kitayama, who stayed steady and then made that huge putt on 17 that really won him the golf tournament. Drove it into the rough on 18, but a great escape shot there, got it onto the green in regulation, 47 feet away. He had not 3-putted the entire tournament, but he had done it twice on Sunday. And I was wondering if he was going to do it again there on that 18th green, but I'm glad he didn't. Left the ball right on the lip from 47 feet away and tapped it in for $3.6 million. Good for him. A local guy that lives out here in Las Vegas. You probably saw his shirt. One of his sponsors, there are friends at MGM, and of course, a former UNLV Rebel golfer as well. So his first PGA Tour victory at an elevated event. That was quite an accomplishment. And I tell you what, Jeff, a lot of people probably didn't realize this guy was inside the top 50 ranked players in the world going into Bay Hill. So a relatively unknown name, but obviously a pretty darn accomplished player as well.
Well, I'll be honest. I never would have guessed that. I would have maybe said top 100, not inside the top 50. And just amazing what one weekend can do for you. Never mind the money, obviously, but it just sets yourselves up and propels you to the TPC. It gets you, what are we, about 5 weeks away or so till the Masters. And then when this really starts to get cooking, I'm looking at that leaderboard, and you talked potentially Friday and Saturday where we're going to have issues with weather, and Rahm came out great on Thursday and really struggled on Friday and Saturday. I mean, even the top of the leaderboard, Kitayama was even on Sunday. Harry English and Rory and Jordan all -2 with Scheffler +1.
Yeah, the wind, it didn't seem to blow as much as I thought it would, or it didn't affect the players as much as I thought it would anyway. Friday and Saturday, you were supposed to have gusts in the neighborhood of 30 miles an hour. But these guys were still shooting some numbers. And yeah, really, John Rahm was the one standout casualty, I guess, if you will. I mean, it was crazy how he started on Thursday. I was like, oh my goodness, here we go again. How hot is this guy? I mean, he was just absolutely on fire. I believe he was the first round leader, if I recall, and then just went south for really 3 days in a row, 2 days in a row for sure. And then he was just pedestrian on Sunday, shooting an even par 72. But I don't root against John Rahm. I like John Rahm, but I'll tell you, it was kind of nice to see him get out of the way and get some new blood in there at the top of the leaderboard and make for what was really an outstanding Sunday. If you think about it, Jeff, we've had 4 elevated events on the PGA Tour season so far. First in Kapalua, where John Rahm overcame Colin Morikawa, who just absolutely collapsed. I remember it well because I was on Morikawa that day along with a lot of other people. I think at one point he had a 9-shot lead. There you go. Raise your hand. Oh, man, that was brutal. But again, an exciting finish. And then you go to Phoenix, a thrilling finish there. The Genesis, where Rahm wins again, holds off Patrick Cantlay and Max Homa, another great finish there. And then Bay Hill down the stretch. It was fantastic. So 4 events, 4 elevated events that we've had on tours so far, I think from a viewing perspective have been great. And really, the Players' Championship this week, it's an elevated event too, always has been. Arguably the best field in golf year in and year out. And with that closing stretch of holes, 16, 17 there in your backdrop, and of course the very difficult 18th hole, I think we ought to have some more drama this week on the PGA Tour as well.
So before we start the preview with the TPC that starts tomorrow, give me your final thoughts leaving Bay Hill and get ready to head here. In other words, maybe someone that really stuck out that might have not been on that leaderboard that was starting to gain some traction, and someone that might have peaked a little early. And I like to call them flash and fades. Obviously, John Rahm was one of them. But anyone catching your eye going into tomorrow's event?
Well, I tell you one guy that's on my radar and was last week and is on a lot of people's radar now because he's really kind of come out of nowhere. It's been about a 5-month turnaround, but Jason Day, now has 4 straight top 10 finishes in the last 4 weeks on tour. So Jason Day just really absolutely turning his game around. We know he's had problems with back injuries throughout his career. It seems it's always been an ailment of some sort that has troubled Jason Day. Of course, he was world number 1 when he won the PGA Championship at Whistling Straits in 2015. And, after that, he slowly but surely started to go downhill and kind of disappeared in the world of golf. But here he comes again. He's really always had a great short game. That kind of never went away. But now he was having a lot of problems with accuracy off the tee. Now he ranks extremely high on the PGA Tour. I want to say he's 11th or so in total driving, a combination of length and accuracy. So he's got the accuracy figured out off the tee. His ball striking with his irons is great, and the short game is still there. So Jason Day really playing some great golf as of late. It could be this week, but I think he's going to win here again pretty soon.
I always seemed back in the day to have Day and Rose somewhere on my card. And I always laugh, when I have Rose on my card, the pedals wilt because he's nowhere to be found. Bad back, as you said, or vice versa. And I was a big Jason Day fan coming up when he had that great stretch. It's great to see these guys, I don't want to say get reborn, but it's nice to see them back on the leaderboard.
Absolutely. I like you. I've always been a Jason Day fan. I mean, he just seems like a great guy, kind of that typical Australian calm demeanor and just a cool cat. And I think he's always been fun to watch. It's great to see his incredible short game prowess. No, I've always been a fan of Jason Day, and I'm a fan of this resurgence. You asked about some other guys last week that, were either maybe progressing momentum wise into this week at the Players or falling off a little bit. And talking about back injuries, Jordan Spieth, we mentioned how he kind of came apart a little bit on the back nine on Sunday. And he was also kind of wincing and holding his lower back, kind of the left side of his lower back a couple times down the stretch. So I certainly hope he's okay. But from a betting perspective, we don't know if he's returned to full health or if that little back problem is still nagging him. We will probably find out on Thursday or over the course of the next 2 to 4 days here at Sawgrass, but something to keep in the back of your mind. Maybe that's a little bit of a chink in the armor for Jordan Spieth.
I have the odds pulled up in front of me. I use my phone and my app for Circa. When we release golf, I always give out the Circa odds. I believe in Derek, Jeff, and Matt and all the crew over there. I currently, to the right of me, have the DraftKings odds, and I'm looking at outright top 5 and top 10. And I was looking at some of my spreadsheets and our work leading up to where we are today. Please correct me if I am wrong. Did I see correctly that Xander Schauffele and Cantlay have both missed the cut the last 2 times here?
Yeah, I think it might be 3 years in a row for Patrick Cantlay. Xander Schauffele did finish second here one time at TPC, but yes, he's missed multiple cuts. Cantlay's actually had pretty darn good success here. He's got a 22nd and a 23rd. And if you remember in 2020, because of COVID, when they played, I think the first round, I think they completed the entire first round, but then they called the event off. Of course, I was on Hideki Matsuyama, who was leading after that first round that year. But Patrick Cantlay was absolutely in the mix that day as well. So he has shown some signs here. But you know what, Jeff? This is one of, I believe, the least predictive events on the entire PGA Tour calendar. There's not necessarily a defined skill set for this golf course that works. You really have to do everything well. Now, you can pinpoint some areas of emphasis that I think are more important than others, but like any good championship golf course that provides a major test, the 5th major test in this case, you're going to have to do everything well. And sometimes it's hard to pinpoint exactly what skill sets are going to matter the most. And, I think it goes into the resumes that you see of these players, Patrick Cantlay, Xander Schauffele, Ricky Fowler, before he won, had missed like 3 cuts here. It's just very topsy-turvy, very volatile. There are very few players here. And this is different from Bay Hill. Just last week, we were at a course that has a tremendously strong course history. Players that typically play well there continue to do so year in and year out. Not the case with TPC. You can be good one year and awful the next. It's a tough one to put your finger on.
And the reason I prefaced what I did is looking at these odds here. Of course, Rory plus 900, Scotty Scheffler plus 1,000, John Rahm plus 1,000. And this just seems out of place. Patrick Cantlay's plus 1,600. And then
right.
After Cantlay is Homer at 2,000, JT at 2,000, Morikawa at 2,200, and then there's Xander at 2,500, with Jason Day at 2,800, with Finau at 2,800, and then Victor Hovland at 3,000. Now, for me that loves to read the market, on my other spreadsheet, I got some head-to-heads here where it looks like Scheffler's the one, even against a Rahm that's favored, and Rahm and McIlroy basically a pick 'em. But my question is, why is Cantlay plus 1,600 there?
Too low or too high for you?
I don't. He looks like the square peg in the round hole. I think with his course history, he should be with Xander at around plus 2,500.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, if you look at his last 2 events, he's finished 3rd and 4th. He was 4th at Bay Hill and 3rd at the Genesis. So, as far as current form, he is really kind of peaking right now, and maybe he's going to absolutely peak this week and get all the way to number 1. If you look at the stats, he's right there with everybody. And Patrick Cantlay is a guy, and I just mentioned that TPC Sawgrass and Bay Hill is true to this too. You have to do everything well. It's not like certain courses where if your ball striking's great, you're going to do well, or if your putting's great, you're going to do well. You got to do a little bit of everything around Sawgrass, and that's true at Bay Hill as well. And sure enough, Patrick Cantlay shoots 68 on Sunday, birdies 3 out of his last 4 holes to finish, and finishes with a 68 to finish in 4th place. Quite a flurry there at the end for Patrick Cantlay. So it's tough to argue with the way he's playing golf right now. And it's also interesting, Jeff, that was the first time he had ever played Bay Hill, a tough golf course. We talked about it last week on your show. Patrick Cantlay, Max Homa, and John Rahm, kind of the California kids, they flourish on Poana greens and the West Coast swing. And what would we see out of them making the trip across country to Florida? Well, Homa was pretty good. He wasn't great. Rahm, we talked about, he certainly fell off. And Cantlay, he kind of proved my thought wrong that, he was maybe going to fall off a little bit when switching over to Florida. He was fantastic. So maybe that proves some naysayers wrong as well, that this guy can't play in Florida. And, I honestly didn't realize this until I was doing my research this week. He's actually lived in Florida for a while now, moved, I believe, from California over to Florida, lives in Jupiter now. So, maybe the old thought that this guy can't play on Bermuda grass and in the state of Florida has been removed, especially with that round or that tournament that he had last week at Bay Hill. So, and again, if you just look at the results, you see the three missed cuts at the Players Championship. But if you dig a little deeper into what he's done around that track, it hasn't been all that bad that it looks there on paper. And he's one of my guys this week, Jeff. I'm actually on him. I could have gotten 18-1 at Circa. I believe he opened 19, around 18 or 19 in some spots. When I opened up my Circa app on Monday, he was at 18, and I thought, you know what? I'm going to wait, and I want to try and get 19. I got greedy and missed out, and so I had to settle for 16 because I wasn't alone on jumping in on Patrick Cantlay at 18-1. So I've got 16 on him, and I'm okay with that. Again, I'd love to have 18. It's probably right in that window that I think the fair price on him is. As an experienced bettor, Jeff, you don't want to take 10-1 when the guy should be more like 19. Even if he wins, I mean, in the long haul, you have to go to the grocery store and buy things at the best price for the long term. Otherwise, you're going to cost yourself some money. And, so I probably cost myself a couple of cents on Patrick Cantlay, but I still think that number at 16 is pretty fair.
Well, when you go and cash that ticket, just tell Derek about the story, and maybe he'll throw in a cabana for you for the Masters. How's that?
Sounds good. I'd love that.
I'm going to throw the board to you. Outrights, head-to-heads, whatever you're seeing. A lot of people watching and listening, and they're bunkered in and can't wait.
Well, I'll tell you what I did as far as outright plays this week. I mentioned Patrick Cantlay at 16-1. My second shortest shot was Colin Morikawa. I actually put together 5 guys that I really liked, but I felt I needed to add one more. I just felt that there was one more guy out there that I might be missing. And I took a long, hard look at Tony Finau and Max Homa, but I ended up on Colin Morikawa, and I was able to get him at a little bit better than 27-1. You mentioned he's down now at Circa to 22-1. And I would say right in the neighborhood of 25 is probably about the right price on Morikawa, 23-25 in that neighborhood. I was able to get 27, as I mentioned. He's a tremendous ball striker. We know he's one of the best iron players in the world. He's extremely accurate off the tee. The one shortcoming, as of late anyway, for Colin Morikawa has been his work around the greens. He still ranks in the neighborhood of 50th on tour for scrambling, which I believe is going to be a very key statistic this week at Sawgrass. If you look at the past winners for the week, they always rank at the top of the field for the week in scrambling. That will prove to be another important statistic, I believe. You have smaller putting surfaces here. You have very quirky bunkers. You have a lot of mounds and undulations. So really having that deft touch around the greens is going to be important this week at Sawgrass. And that's been a bugaboo for Colin Morikawa as of late. Like I say, for the entire 2022-2023 season, he still ranks pretty high, but it's been recently that he hasn't had the success in that neighborhood. Other people will also look to his 2 recent missed cuts. He missed the cut at Phoenix and he missed the cut last week at Bay Hill, but he had top 10. There you go. He had top 10 finishes at Torrey Pines and at the Genesis. So the guy hasn't completely fallen off the map. One of the things I like about Colin Morikawa, and you talk about market reading, it just seems like there's not the usual buzz on Morikawa this week. People have kind of dropped on Morikawa because of a couple of recent missed cuts. And really it probably started when you and I were, drowning in our sorrows there with the collapse at Kapalua. His stock has kind of slowly trickled down ever since then. But when this guy, I saw him at 27. I mean, you talked about it last week with Justin Thomas. Colin Morikawa, I think, is in that same conversation. This is the 10th ranked player in the world, 27, 28, 30 to 1. If you can find that, I think it becomes an auto bet. I expect him to bounce back here and have a good week. One of the correlated courses I used this week, I used a lot of Pete Dye designs, guys that have had success on Pete Dye designs. We talked about Cantlay. He's just been a monster at Harbor Town, the RBC Heritage. He's had tremendous success there, and we've seen a lot of crossover with guys that do well there also do well at TPC. Colin Morikawa has won the Workday, the WGC Workday, kind of a one-off event at the Concession, a golf course right there in Florida, in Bradenton, Florida. Morikawa won that event, and I think the setup there is very similar to TPC Sawgrass. So that was another angle that had me landing on Colin Morikawa, and maybe 2 Vegas guys in a week, right? Kitayama and Morikawa. Maybe we can go back to back here for Sin City. My third choice was Jason Day. I just can't lay off him right now. He's that hot, 4 straight top 10 finishes in a row. Also, if you look at what he's done at TPC, of course, he's won here before, Jeff. He's also finished 5th, 8th, 19th, and 6th. I talked about, not a lot of guys having tremendous course history here, that it's a very volatile tournament where you don't see consistency in how well or how poor guys are doing typically. But Jason Day, one of the outliers that typically plays pretty darn well here. I talked about the short game being important this week. We know Jason Day has that in spades, and he's got everything off of the tee working as well. He's a popular pick this week, and I hate that. Last week I was on a popular pick and Will Zalatoris, and he kind of flamed out. I hope Jason Day does not. I think he's been so good as of late, and he goes to a course where I think he feels very comfortable that we should be able to avoid that. The next player I took was Tyrrell Hatton. Very good week last week at Bay Hill. In his last 3 starts, 2 top 10 finishes and a top 15. Another guy that has a tremendous short game. Number 2 on the PGA Tour in total driving, a combination of length and accuracy. I favor accuracy a little bit more here at TPC Sawgrass than I do driving distance. Now, we've seen bombers win here. Fred Couples, Tiger Woods, Davis Love, Jason Day, Rory McIlroy. We've also seen some really short hitters win here as well. Siwoo Kim, Webb Simpson, Fred Funk, Tim Clark, Matt Kuchar. So again, it goes to our point that it takes a little bit of everything, and it's a tough puzzle to figure out. But Hatton, with being very accurate off the tee, I think that'll set him up for some easier iron shots. The iron game is sometimes the area that has escaped him, but still overall ranks 28th on tour in strokes gained approach, and also has done extremely well over the course of his career on Pete Dye courses. So Hatton made my list this week. Also took him in a head-to-head matchup over Jordan Spieth. I talked about the possible lingering injury for Jordan Spieth. Last week we saw him grabbing his back. We'll see if that carries over. Spieth does not have a great history here at Sawgrass either. Another player that's really been all over the map as far as his results at the Players Championship, where Tyrrell Hatton, a little bit more solid, finished 13th last year at the Players Championship. So minus 135 Hatton over Spieth on a head-to-head matchup. I mentioned Jason Day. Also took him minus 120 over Matt Fitzpatrick on a head-to-head. Then I went a little further down the board to Sungjae Im. This is the 3rd time in 4 weeks that I've been on Sungjae Im. He had 2 top 10 finishes in a row in Phoenix and then Torrey Pines, and now he's kind of fallen off just a little bit. Had a rough go at the Honda Classic. I'm trying to remember the other tournament in between there where he finished like 55th or something like that. but, he cut his finish position at the Honda, finished 42nd in the Honda. He cut that in half at Bay Hill, finishing 21st, just one shot out of cashing a top 20 for us there last week. But this guy really has made hay in Florida. He's had great success on the Florida swing, has Sun JM. He's a little bit like Cantlay, where he doesn't have any glaring weakness in his game, good around the greens, very good on shorter courses. Now, I mentioned the Concession being a correlated course. Also, Sedgefield Country Club, where they play the Wyndham Championship. We've seen a ton of crossover success. Siwoo Kim, Webb Simpson, and Sun JM has had a tremendous track record at the Wyndham. His last 5 trips, I think he's finished like 2nd, 6th, 7th. I mean, just nothing but top 10 stuff at Sedgefield, which is, kind of a positional ball strikers course similar to TPC and shorter in length. People don't realize TPC is a fairly short course by tour standards, right around 7,200 yards. And Sun JM on those shorter type courses, Pete Dye courses, has had great success. So I got him at 40-1. And then finally, my longest bomb, I was really able to find an outlier number, 90-1 on Siwoo Kim. Now, I think the consensus number is more like 65 or 75, but I was pretty lucky to find a rogue 90-1 out there. And so I jumped on it. Guy's been very good, sneaky good on tour this year. People don't remember just a few weeks ago, a couple months ago, whatever it was, he won the Sony Open at Wailea Country Club in Oahu. And so that always bodes well when a guy has a win, not too far long ago. That'll tell you that he's still in good form. I mentioned how well he's done at the Wyndham Championship before. He's won there. He's also won the Players Championship before. Excellent in driving accuracy. And again, kind of like Sun JM, and maybe even better, really flourishes on the die tracks and the shorter courses where, length is not necessarily a requirement. So that's the entire card there. We can get to this in a minute. I'll let you comment, but I did play a couple of first round leaders as well, but that's it as far as the head-to-head matchups, 2 head-to-heads and 6 outrights to win the tournament, and then to also finish top 20.
And top 20. Okay. It's funny. You started talking about Morikawa, and I'm in the same boat as you. ECSI has cashed some tremendous tickets on him outright pre-flops, and I love the guy to death. And I'm in 2 head-to-heads, one in Rick Gaiman's and one in Pat Mayo's.
Rick's a great guy, by the way. Very good golf handicapper.
I get a lot of my work. His website, Rick Run Good, free plug, Rick. Absolutely. More stats.
Lives here in Vegas as well.
Yes, exactly. And it was so funny because last week I was watching the golf and I said to myself, I see something in Morikawa. I liked what I saw, and I played him in the head-to-head, and then obviously misses the cut. And my question to you, maybe you can help people out. I'm not one of these guys, but there's a lot of people that, hey, if you play them 1 week and they don't even make the cut, they can't go back to them. What would you say to someone like that to say, hey, we talk horses for courses, guys in form, we talk it all. It was just a bad couple days. And how do you get back on that horse, Brady?
Well, Colin Morikawa is an interesting case in particular. If you remember a couple of years ago, he didn't play too well at the Scottish Open, and he was talking about I think he had like a new set of irons or something like that. They really weren't meshing well with his swing, and he was kind of frustrated at the Scottish Open, and a lot of people backed off of him because of those comments. Well, he came out the next week and won the British Open, holding off Jordan Spieth. I remember that well because I was on Spieth. But Morikawa is a perfect case in point there of a guy that you can't just bail on him so quickly. And, I talked about it, how it feels like in the market, his stock is, has plummeted. Plummeted is too strong of a word, but has declined a little bit because of what we've seen as of late. A couple of missed cuts at Phoenix and at Bay Hill, but people seem to forget a couple of top 10s at Torrey Pines and the Genesis. So, as good as he's been, or as bad as he's been just as good. Really, he really hasn't fallen off. I think maybe people are just expecting more out of him. But the odds makers have allowed him to drift up, like I say in my case, to as high as 27-1, and I'll certainly take that. Now, Jeff, in regards to just anybody, obviously if they miss 2, 3, 4 cuts in a row, then you got to take notice. But I think you also have to temper it a little bit. Hey, some guys miss cuts. Tiger Woods, the only person in the world that made like 144 in a row. Or, I mean, that is absolutely one of the most ridiculous records in all of sports ever. Guys are going to miss cuts, especially these elevated events on very difficult golf courses when you have the top 50 players in the world, basically week in and week out. It's easy to come up a little bit short. So, I think you have to, pump the brakes a little bit on a guy missing a cut or two. But if you're able to see a trend where a guy, maybe it's mixed in with a withdrawal. He misses a couple cuts, then he has a WD, and then he takes a couple weeks off, and then you start to wonder, okay, is he 100% health wise? You just have to analyze that stuff. But a couple of blips on the radar, I don't think are any reason to immediately back off a guy.
You talked about first round leaders. What do you see in there?
First round leader, I played 3 guys, and this is a market. I should preface this by saying this is a market that's, you have to tread lightly. As far as hold percentage, Jeff, it is the biggest hold percentage for the sports books is first round leader, even more so than outright tournament winner. Of course, top 20 finishes, head-to-head matchups are the lowest hold percentage of the book. That's your best chance to actually turn a profit. But first round leader is a lot of fun. Get you interested on Thursday, watching that leaderboard. But again, my advice is to dabble lightly in the FRL market because it's a tough one to beat. I went with Patrick Cantlay at 33-1. I talked about all his strengths and the fact that I like him to win the entire tournament, but he's also gotten off to some great starts in the first round. If you look at another die course, TPC River Highlands, he's had some tremendous starts there, 66s, 67s, actually shot a 60 there in the second round in 2011. I talked about what he's done at Harbor Town, again, starting out with 66s, 67s. In fact, it was last year he started out with a 66 and ended up finishing second to Jordan Spieth in that tournament. When I look at the first round leader market, however, I like to look at scoring average, first round scoring average, birdie average, and then also bogey avoidance. I mean, if you're good in first round scoring, not making bogeys and making a lot of birdies, you've got a shot, right? Pretty simple. Patrick Cantlay, second on tour in bogey avoidance. I believe he's 19th in first round scoring. So he has some things going in his direction to possibly get out in front early here. Also, another thing I kind of like to look at, and this is not an end all be all, but typically more of your first round leaders will come from the early wave of tee times rather than the late. And Patrick Cantlay going to be teeing off about 45 minutes into this golf tournament on Thursday at 7:34 a.m. Eastern time. The second player I went with is another guy that I have for an outright, and that's Sungjae Im. And again, he is 4th on tour in first round scoring, makes a lot of birdies, doesn't make a lot of bogeys. And we talked about, why I like him to win the entire tournament. He's had, I think he opened the Wyndham with a 62 one time. We know how his success there has been at the Wyndham, a correlated course here, in my opinion, to Sawgrass. And he's opened up with some really low rounds there. So took a stab at Sungjae for the first round leader at 50-1. And then a long shot, a guy that's actually teeing off in the late wave is Tom Hoge at 90-1. And I actually had a hunch about Hoge as a possible guy I was going to land on to win this tournament outright. He's an incredible ball striker, and his strokes gained approach statistics are just off the charts. He's one of the best in the world. But the short game right now is in a bad place. He's 183rd on tour in strokes gained around the green. So I eventually laid off Hoge for the entire tournament outright, but I certainly think the guy's capable of putting a good round or two together, and I'm hoping it comes on Thursday. This guy actually was the first round leader just last year when he fired a 66. He's had good results at this tournament. I think it's 3 years in a row that he's finished top 35, and he has that ability to go low. Another correlated course, PGA West, the stadium course out in La Quinta, where they play the American Express. They play 2 of the 4 rounds on that Pete Dye design. Tom Hoagie is broken out there with 66s, 67s. So he seems to have an affinity. He won at Pebble Beach, and I remember that one because I was on him at 60 to 1, thankfully. But Pebble Beach, not necessarily similar to Sawgrass, but it is in the sense that it has small greens and you really have to scramble well. And Hoagie has a win at that track. So I think, it's very possible that this guy, and has shown in past results, that he likes the style of this course, likes the shorter track. And if he can get hot for one day, hopefully that day is Thursday.
You talked about the first round leaders, and I remember a couple of years ago, we had a 40 to 1 on Matsuyama, and I was about to rip it up. And then I think he birdied 16, 17, and he sunk like a 40-footer on 18 for the win. And I just, no better feeling. I mean, it's just like, there's a lot of people in our lanes that prefer the first round leaders. They think you get not a better bang for your buck, but a lot of times they'll go with some of the bombers, and they just feel, then they'll go into the head-to-head, the top 10s, the top 20s, versus trying to pick out the outright leaders.
Well, I would say it's a lot of fun. It's instant gratification almost. You're watching there on Thursday, and, it is a heck of a lot of fun. Certainly, I think one of the more fun markets to bet on of all. But as I mentioned, with hold percentage, it's also probably the very most difficult, or where you have the largest disadvantage.
And the real tough one is if you got a bomb in there, and then it's a 4 or 5 way tie at the top, so you're sitting there with the golden ticket, and then it's getting cut in half in the thirds and the quarters.
Yeah, check your rules at whatever book you're playing at. I actually one time hit a first round leader that had tied with a few other guys, and they gave me a push. That was awful. But I did hit one at the Honda Classic, Joseph Bramlett. And I ended up, actually he was tied with one other guy, and Carson Young, not Cameron Young, who we all know about, Carson Young, who's ranked whatever 100th in the world, didn't finish his round on Thursday, comes back the next day on a very difficult par 3 and birdies it to tie for the lead. So that cut my my chop there in the first round leader a little more. But at least I got paid on that one. I did split that one 3 ways rather than a push. That was just awful. I wasn't expecting that at all. But the point is here, check the rules at your book.
The scroller's been going the whole time. If anyone here is not following, please go to Twitter at Las Vegas Golfer. You can find his work at golf_com, GolfBet, PGA Tour, Sports Grid. I know you're going on Sports Grid. I think today you're on the weekend, but tell everyone where they can find your work, Brady.
Yeah, thank you so much. Well, of course, every Wednesday right here at 3 p.m. Eastern with you, Jeff. And then, like you say, the Twitter handle at Las Vegas Golfer. I keep everything updated on the Twitter feed there. Golf.com. I write a weekly column for golf.com, all my picks. And then also on Wednesdays and Fridays, I write for the PGA Tour. You mentioned GolfBet. That is their betting division, the PGA Tour. On Wednesdays, I put out a first round leader column. And then on Fridays, I kind of put an after the cut column out, who we're looking at on the weekend to either fade or back. That'll be out on Fridays after, of course, the second round is finished for that week's particular tournament. And then Sports Grid. Yeah, later this evening, right around 10 p.m. Eastern on Wednesdays. I'll be on there every Wednesday to preview the event. And then I come on Saturdays and Sundays in the evening. Again, Saturday, kind of similar to the PGA Tour article I write, where are we headed into Sunday? Who looks good? Are we doing any final round head-to-head matchups, that type of thing. And then Sunday, a little bit of a recap and a look ahead to the next event.
We can't thank you enough. Next week, where's the tour head next week?
The Valspar Championship right outside of Tampa, the Copperhead course at Innisbrook. Difficult course. And this is actually a course that I used as a corollary to TPC Sawgrass as well. But it's similar to the Wyndham, that shorter track where ball striking and scrambling is paramount. Driving accuracy probably trumps distance a little bit. So, look at guys and how they have fared at the Valspar Championship when handicapping TPC Sawgrass as well. But probably going to be a little bit of a downfield, I would think. After Valspar, that concludes the Florida swing, and then we kind of do the Texas two-step, and then where we are next, down Magnolia Lane for Augusta. So it'll be interesting to see these next 3 weeks, which tournaments guys pick and choose to attend and what not to as they prepare for the first major of the year.
The one and only Brady Kannon. Go follow him at Las Vegas Golfer. Go check him out on the grid tonight at 10 o'clock and obviously on the weekends. Can't thank you enough. Look forward to next Wednesday as we head to the Valspar. I got a lot of tickets to be punching in later today, and we can't thank you enough. All the watchers and listeners, thank you. If you're not following us, please go over to EC Sports Invest and our YouTube page at East Coast Sports Investors. Around 5 o'clock my time in Easton, Riley Magnuson will get everyone caught up in the closing bell. And I myself will be back in the morning with a bunch of shows. So everyone have a great day. And as always, Brady, thank you so much.
Thank you, Jeff. Always appreciate it. And let's cash more tickets than we lose.
Absolutely.